This movie begins with the thoughts of a man, Max, who narrates his likes and dislikes, his beliefs and disbeliefs, while underwater visuals show a man drowning, gasping beneath a river known for taking men when time and chance leave them behind. Things take a bad turn exactly 1 week earlier when life still has structure and the lonely man still has a job. He works at the closing office department, handling files that come with impossible cases and messy endings. A new detective is shown around. He's introduced to Max, the man whose whole family was taken in one brutal moment. The detective gets advised not to try small talk with Max again, as there's no point, and no one really gets close to a man stuck in the past. Later, he walks the railway's edge without reacting to the 3 men in hoodies who are clearly waiting for trouble to clock in. They pick him as tonight's target, following him into the men's restroom where they corner him for a wristwatch. But he already knows what's coming, as in fact, he's been watching Doug for a while now. Next, they accuse him of stealing the accessory, but Max doesn't argue because he's more interested in what they'll do when he doesn't flinch. Doug's crew makes a move, and our protagonist retaliates by punching the armed one straight in the face, sending them all scrambling into bathroom stalls while he fires shots after them like he's checking plumbing with bullets. The leader tries to act unbothered, putting on the crazy, but when his victim catches him, he starts mumbling some weird prayer for help, like he's summoning backup from a god who's just as shady. He pulls out a photo of his wife, and suddenly, it's clear this isn't random because no one carries that picture by accident. Doug keeps rambling and giving nothing useful, but his voice just adds to Max's rage until even the silence would have been more helpful. One of his boys wanders down the train tracks, but he isn't alone because a shadow-like figure begins stalking him, and when he tries to fight it off, an oncoming train barrels into him. Max returns to Trevor, interrupting the mood without concern because he wants more information about who might be behind his family's disappearance, though Trevor wishes he would leave it alone. Trevor had mentioned Bill before, but the requester still isn't convinced, and when the informant refuses to say anything new, his ear gets twisted as a warning, making it clear the intruder is not done asking. The poor guy looks stuck, like someone holding on to more than he's saying, but before things can go further, Natasha steps in from the side, having watched the scene and choosing to end it before it escalates. She tries to keep things calm, but Mona shows up soon after and wastes no time putting her sister in her place, showing no softness, even though they're related. The reason behind Mona's attitude isn't clear, but Max speaks up, asking her to let Natasha be, and while the dominant one usually doesn't listen to anyone, this time she backs off and walks away with her suited men. Trevor's continued pleas to leave are ignored, and the stubborn man follows his hunch deeper into the building until he enters a private room with several women around in various states of undress, touching and kissing each other without concern. He watches from the doorway without hiding, but then Jack appears beside him, bald, silent, and covered in tattoos along his arm, and he stares at Max with a fixed look that doesn't break. No words are exchanged, and neither makes a move, as the moment settles between them like a line that might be crossed at any second. It's a silent face-off between both men, but it doesn't last long because Natasha, one of the women from the room, steps out and cuts through the tension. She walks up to her target and leans in close, whispering something suggestive in his ear, something that plants a thought she knows how to stir. He follows her without saying a word, and Jack watches them go while letting out a faint smirk that fades into something more uncertain, like maybe even regret, because if there's one thing about the woman, it's that she's hard to resist. Somewhere else in the party, a woman drinks from a small vial, and not long after, she begins to feel a presence above her, a shadow that creeps over her and sends a cold wave down her spine. The man brings his companion home, and before they're even fully inside, she starts kissing him, while he remains still and detached. She keeps going anyway, removing her dress and lying on the bed with her legs parted, offering herself without hesitation. She knows her potential love interest is struggling, and she thinks this might be what he needs, someone who can play the part, becoming a placeholder for what he's lost, and promise to give him what he's been craving for. But that offer only disgusts him, so the illusion breaks, and his frustration rises as he tells her to get out immediately, his face hard and unforgiving. Natasha is caught off guard, clearly not expecting rejection, and when she asks if he means it, he doesn't waver. The blow is undeniable, and though she tries to cover it by laughing it off, there's no hiding how deeply her pride's been hit. She walks out, mocking him with her laughter as if to save face, but Max knows it's bitterness masked as amusement, and he watches her leave, angered by how she tried to cheapen something he's been grieving for. Out on the street, the lady walks alone, still on the phone with Owen, Speaking casually without realizing Jack is following her from above, jumping from rooftop to rooftop and staying just out of sight. Then her night takes a turn as two large bat-like demons appear and begin to chase her, using the same trick they're known for by sending their shadows ahead to stir fear before striking. Natasha runs, but panic overwhelms her and she trips, landing hard. Gathering herself is tough, and soon they're on her, tearing through the silence while she screams in terror. Morning comes, and the cold office Max works in is buzzing more than usual. He doesn't know what exactly is going on, but across the street, a familiar car honks, and inside it is Alex, his old partner, bringing with him the hope of answers. The driver takes him on a ride to a crime scene, and he doesn't know why he's been brought there, but the former colleague reaches into his pocket and pulls out the missing driver's license, which was found at the scene. The tattoo on Natasha's wrist is all the confirmation the grieving man needs, and now another person he's had contact with has turned up deceased. Meanwhile, Jack stays on the rooftops watching them as they make their assumptions. Alex drives the passenger to another part of town and steps out under the rain because he wants answers. The girl who was with Max the previous night has been mauled, and although he's clearly affected by Natasha's passing, he insists he has nothing to answer for. The investigator is running out of patience because he expects his former partner to open up to him about what's bothering him. But the other man doesn't think Alex has done enough about his missing family, so there's no trust, just a wall of silence. This gets to the officer because he's been doing all he can, but Max is too clouded by rage to accept anything that doesn't bring him closer to whoever is responsible. He walks away, ignoring Alex's calls. Mona hasn't heard the news yet, but she's informed while in the middle of a high-profile meeting, showing no emotion as she listens and simply nodding and keeping her chin up. Meanwhile, Alex is willing to do everything within his power to help his old partner, so he flips through Natasha's case file and spots something interesting, a mark on the wrist of the deceased. He quickly checks Michelle Payne's case file and finds that exact same mark on her wrist too, and now something is beginning to make sense. The detective tries calling his former colleague to share this theory, but the call doesn't go through. Mona, being someone of high profile, is handed all the details and evidence related to her sister's demise. Two names stand out: Owen, the man Natasha called just before her attacker arrived, and the brooding investigator whose wallet was in her possession. Eventually, the message reaches its intended recipient, stating there's a link between the two cases and Alex wants to tell him more about it. The recipient is sharp enough to realize something about the timing doesn't sit right. His former partner should have reached out much earlier, so he rushes to his place. When he gets there and finds the doorknob broken, he senses something is wrong, so he arms himself. He gains access and starts calling out, but there's no answer, which makes him more anxious. All he can hear is the creaking sound of a door swinging open and shut. Just by the exit, the detective's body lies lifeless, with sound coming from that same door and a bright light flashing on Max's face with each swing. Before he can react, he's attacked by a masked figure who kicks him in the face and clearly intends to end him. He loses a lot of blood in seconds and drops his gun, but he manages to escape a final blow by pulling out the backup weapon from his ankle holster and firing. The attacker may have been hit, but as the shot rings out, the sky turns red. He wakes up in a hospital bed and finds Bibi, an old associate who's now retired, sitting by him. The visitor explains what the authorities think went down at Alex's place, and from their point of view, suspicion is already falling on Max. But he doesn't care what anyone thinks. He'll show up in person and wait for whoever has the guts to say it to his face. The loss in town has been nothing short of disturbing, and the news outlets keep tossing theories around, but no one really knows what's going on. Everyone's just guessing. Bibi takes Max over to Aesir Pharmaceutical, his former workplace, and also where Michelle used to work. Miss Horn, the boss, welcomes them at the entrance and offers whatever help she can, especially regarding Alex's case. Later in Bibi's office, he tells his guest about the company's plan to honor Michelle with an art scholarship in her name. The man doesn't say much as he's not exactly moved, but still, it's a decent gesture. Bibi then hands over a funeral suit, and the two head out for the service. Krista, Alex's wife, is drowning in grief, and the presence of her husband's closest friend only makes things worse. Her sorrow quickly turns to anger, and she walks up to her target, slapping him across the face before unloading everything she's been holding in. She blames Max for pushing her husband too far, says he never once appreciated him, and she's convinced that he might still be alive if the man had just shown a bit of gratitude. Krista makes it clear that she never wants to see him again. After the funeral, the former agent gets an unexpected visit from Jim, the guy from Internal Affairs. At the office, the investigator tries to ask questions about everything that's been going on, and the man in black plays it cool, answering like it's no big deal. Jim points out how both Natasha and Alex died shortly after being around the same person, but the ex-cop has heard enough. He gets up and walks out mid-conversation, like he's clocked out for the day. That doesn't sit well with Jim, who later pulls BB aside and basically puts him in charge of keeping tabs on his friend. He wants BB to keep an eye on him, dig a little, and maybe get him to open up. According to Jim, the guy needs serious help. Leaving the building, the former partner lets BB think they're leaving together, but ditches him at the elevator and heads to the homicide division, which used to be Alex's old turf. Everyone there can't believe he showed up. To them, he's the guy responsible for the fallen detective's demise, and they don't hide how they feel, throwing insults and shade. While the lone wolf keeps walking straight to the office that once belonged to his colleague, he locks the door and starts turning the place upside down, searching for anything the late officer might have left behind. Outside, the others are shouting and banging on the door, completely fed up with his audacity. By the time Alex's boss finally breaks through, the man has already gone out the window, with whatever evidence the deceased had been saving for him. Later that night, BB finds him brooding at the back of a bar. The ex-agent has already made up his mind that his friend definitely knew something. BB, however, isn't entirely convinced. He figures the other man might have stumbled on something, but the grieving soul is past theories. He's certain the truth seeker was snuffed because of what he knew, and he doesn't have the patience to argue. Without another word, the lone figure walks off, leaving BB. Eventually, with nowhere else to go, the ex-cop finds himself wandering dimly lit streets. That's when he notices a group moving strangely in the distance, and he senses something's off. They look too calculated, like hitmen, maybe so the wanderer grips his weapon, already anticipating a fight. Unfortunately, it's not enough. As he backs up toward a building, trying to create space, he walks straight into Mona's gun. She doesn't waste time, known to be tough, not exactly the patient type, and since her sister Natasha's last known contact was standing right in front of her, she's not about to let things slide. So, he kneels, and every question she asks is followed by a punch, as if the answers depend on how much damage his jaw can take. But the man honestly doesn't know how his wallet ended up with her sister. Eventually, he gets a few words in. He says Natasha's casualty is connected to Michelle's and Alex's too, but he's proposing a partnership to solve the cases. The new allies stop at an abandoned building, and as they make their way to the third floor, they hear someone screaming in a high pitch that's guttural, and definitely not okay. It's Owen, the last person Natasha called before she died, and he's in total chaos, clawing at the air and muttering nonsense, also covered in sweat, terrified out of his mind, and barely aware that the two even stepped in. They try to talk to him, but he keeps going on about what happened to the woman. Then, without warning, it's like something takes over him and makes him start walking backwards, mumbling about wings and salvation, heading straight for an opening at the edge of the building, where he falls straight down and lands hard on a car below. Unbeknownst to them, Jack is nearby, watching. Later, the reluctant duo visit a tattoo artist and inquire about the strange symbol found on Owen. The artist identifies it as a Norse Valkyr myth tattoo, and according to legend, the only way to reach heaven is through a violent sacrifice. Back in the old days, large birds supposedly circled over battlefields, choosing who deserves salvation. Meanwhile, Jack is having his own fun. Somewhere far from moral decency, he's presiding over the torture of a man tied to a chair. He taunts the poor guy with a vial, letting him taste just a drop, and it's enough to supercharge him, enough to make him tear out of the chair. The rest of the liquid was spilled earlier, and Jack has a plan. While the man laps up what's left of the liquid gold, the sadist pulls out a machete, and what follows is brutal and very final. The journey continues for the unlikely team, and although the former detective drives them to an old building, he's not even allowed to hang around because it's Lincoln's turf, and Lincoln doesn't exactly do visitors. Mona heads in while the ex-detective waits, and once inside, she wastes no time asking what they're up against. With her sister gone and more deaths piling up, she needs clarity. Lincoln doesn't hesitate, and he tells her the tattoos they've seen aren't just creepy symbols, but are devil's marks. According to him, something dark is moving through the town, and unfortunately, it's not done yet. He even names the person behind it all, and apparently, Jack's hideout is called the Ragnarok. Naturally, Mona wants to know how her new partner fits into all this, but Lincoln doesn't have good news. He warns her that the man she came with has uncovered things he was never supposed to, and because of that, strange things keep happening around him. He's convinced that anyone who stays close to Max might end up like Natasha. Meanwhile, the haunted man is already on the move again because he can't shake the voices playing in his head, as there's Doug's riddles and Owen's madness. Soon, he pulls into Azier Pharmaceutical and heads straight to the records section, flipping through his wife's file until something stops him. It's Azier's brand logo, and it's got a wing in it, the same wing linked to that Norse Valkyr mythology the tattoo artist mentioned. So, the former officer finds BB and lays it all out, but things get tense when he starts pointing fingers. He's sure Michelle's supervisor, Jason, has something to do with this, especially since her file is incomplete. BB tries to defend Jason, but Max isn't buying it, and because of this, the older man decides it's time to get Jim involved, so he tells him everything. He starts from the beginning about how the ex-partner walked into his house one night to find men with machetes waiting, and how he had to fight for his life. He got two, but one slipped, and even though he survived, it didn't matter because Michelle didn't. Eventually, the shaken supervisor cracks, revealing the deceased's last project was a top-secret government assignment. Scientists were ordered to develop a formula that would make soldiers superhuman, but the project went south with 99% of the test subjects biting dust. The few who did survive were left with hallucinations and violent cravings, and the government shut it down, but that wasn't the end of it. The late biochemist had become a target after one of the test subjects escaped, the same one that brutally ended her. Now, the man in the office is terrified and begs her husband to protect him, promising to spill everything. This time, the threat is coming from inside. Max leads him outside, but they're met by Azier's armed security, and the whistleblower barely gets a word out before one of them shoots him clean in the chest. Caught off guard, the protagonist fires back and drops one assailant before ducking behind a wall. Bullets start flying across the compound, hitting everything but their intended target. The men aren't just reckless, it's like they've been ordered to shoot on sight, no matter who gets in the way. The marked man makes a run for it while taking out a few more, but he gets clipped in the arm. Still, he keeps moving until he runs straight into Jim, who locks the door behind them and tells him to turn himself in. Max refuses, and for him, being locked up just means silencing the truth. Before the internal affairs officer can argue, the door bursts open from the other side. The chaos gives the fugitive just enough of a window to slip away from the guards, and from Jim, who's now furious. Later, Mona finds him in hiding and is stunned by what he's uncovered. The folder contains everything about the failed experiment, Project Valkyr. There's even a video archive showing the early trials, with footage of both the supervisors and the specimens. The first test subject on screen is none other than Jack. He's calm, smiling, and clearly enjoying the attention, talking openly about the drug, and he says he likes how fearless it makes him, how the enemy looks when they're terrified. Max doesn't need any more convincing, and he's done waiting because the monster is going down. Mona warns him to think twice, but it's no use. She suspects he isn't afraid of going down, not if it means being with Michelle and their daughter again, and really, that's the end he's been chasing all along. Now he's on the offensive, storming Ragnarok. He knocks out the first man at the door with a blow from his gun, and when two more guards come charging, he guns them down without breaking stride. The Avenger gains access to the storeroom, where all the drugs are kept in millions of vials, and also produced in-house, and although it's silent at first, Jack's men are already on high alert. They burst in and start firing without aim, and instead of strategy, they rely on sheer luck, hoping at least one stray bullet hits the target. But the fugitive stays low and hides perfectly, and when the noise settles for just a second, he reappears and drops the two men with back-to-back shots from his pump action. However, he's nearly caught off guard when a soldier, positioned at a higher level, spots him and quietly takes aim. Yet a small sound betrays the marksman's location, and the ex-cop falls backward while firing up, and with two clean shots, the sniper eats dust. Just when things calm down, the mastermind enters the scene like he's been waiting for this exact moment. With his machete in hand, he charges at the former detective and pins him to the ground, and while the man struggles beneath him, the assailant starts muttering references to Norse mythology, almost like a ritual. The villain raises the blade and is inches away from striking, but before it lands, a sudden gunshot rips through the tension. BB shows up and fires straight into the attacker's chest. The protagonist is shocked, and although he's grateful, he immediately asks how BB even knew he was at Ragnarok. BB says a few words, and before the hero can get any answers, Joe, BB's trusted colleague, steps in and knocks him out. Eventually, the lead character regains consciousness, and when he does, he finds himself limping ahead with handcuffs digging into his wrists and a gun trained against his back. The mood is quiet, and then BB begins to talk. He explains that Michelle had gotten too close by poking around and stumbling onto something that was meant to stay buried. And so, for BB, eliminating her wasn't emotional but necessary. After that night, BB changed completely, and from that point on, he decided he would always protect himself first, even if it meant betraying those he once called family. The villain was just another pawn, and BB hadn't hesitated to take him out either. After all, he still has dozens of soldiers at his disposal, and more waiting if needed. And then he admits that on the night Michelle lost her life, the lead man had barely missed him. BB was already there, watching the entire thing unfold, standing between the deceased and the one who still had to live with it. Max can't stop the tears because the one person he trusted, the one who stuck with him through everything, is the same one who's been behind all the pain. And just when it feels like he's already at rock bottom, BB says he didn't even mind when his dad died, which is cruel, and it's pointless, and it's exactly the kind of thing you don't say to someone who's already drowning. While the man is still trying to process that, BB says everything's already set up, and the world's not likely to ask questions, not when everyone already thinks he hasn't exactly been doing well lately. Joe fires, but Max acts fast and knocks him sideways, so the bullet misses, and he throws himself into both opponents, so they go down while he takes off. He dodges the next wave of gunfire and leaps into the freezing river, cold enough to stop a heart, so the new villain just assumes that's it, and the man is done for. And honestly, maybe he is. Because the man sinks, and the cold gets into everything, his thoughts start fading until there's just one thing left: Michelle. The whole memory of what used to be is enough to make him fight again, even though his body is numb and the current is dragging him and he's barely able to move. But he reaches into his pocket, and he grabs one vial of Valkyr to gulp down. Something shifts and he roars from under the water like something wild and angry and alive, and a storm of huge black birds answers, like they've been waiting for him to wake up. Meanwhile, Jim is getting grilled by his boss for not handling the Max situation, but he's done pretending everything is fine, so he calls in the FBI because maybe they can do what no one else could. Now that the FBI is involved, BB and Joe start panicking properly, and they come up with a quick escape plan. While they're moving through the parking lot, Max shows up and wipes out every single guard without blinking, but the main culprits still manage to slip away. Then BB grabs his phone and calls Miss Horn because he needs a chopper now. The betrayed man keeps coming, but the birds come back too, and this time they're circling with the shape of Michelle in their center, and her voice is calling to him. For a second, he just stands there like none of the chaos matters, and then he screams, not just out of rage, but out of something deeper. That energy blasts outward, sends the birds flying high into the sky. A guard tries to shoot, but Mona jumps in just in time and tells her partner to stop looking back and start ending what needs to be ended. Then she's off again, and she finds the sidekick, who tries to talk slick like he always does, but Mona handles it quickly and smartly and runs off again before Aesir's goons can show up. He still manages to hit one last button before giving up the ghost, activating a bomb that goes off and blows a whole side of the building. And honestly, that explosion feels right on cue for Jim and the team. Max finally corners his nemesis on the rooftop, but the opponent shoots him first, with the defender taking the hit, and now the other man is suddenly out of bullets now. He then tries talking again, trying to smooth his way out of it like the old days, but his former friend isn't here for speeches, so he shoots the retiree right in the heart, and it's quite simple and final. When it's done, the troubled guy just falls to his knees because he's got nothing left, while the guards surround him. He starts mumbling those same weird likes and dislikes from the beginning, like the whole nightmare just looped right back to where it all started.